It's time now for the Bob Siegel Show, a religious open forum where all questions are welcome. And now, here's your host, Christian apologist, Bob Siegel.
And this is Bob Siegel. So, you'd like to believe in God, but things seem very unstable in our world today, and you wonder where God is. Actually, my friend, while I agree that a wide number of precarious situations exist in our world, many in the media are trying to make it seem a whole lot worse than it is. Speaking of reliable media sources, in case you missed the Golden Globes last week, and many of you may have missed them because you should have been listening to my program, broadcasting at the same time. Well, be of good cheer. Your old pal Bob recorded the prestigious awards ceremony. And when I returned home from the radio station last week, I got to watch the entire show. Wow, there's 3 hours of my life I'll never have back again. Anyway, here's a recap. In case you missed the Golden Globes, here's what you missed. America is an oppressive country which will maybe have equality someday. While some are guilty of sexual harassment and some aren't, all white heterosexual men should more or less apologize that they even exist. Donald Trump, naturally, is a big jerk. Oh, yeah. And occasionally, once in a while, they actually said something about the nominated films. Of course, the big news this week is supposed to once again be something that Trump said. Seldom, if ever, will the mainstream media comment on the things he actually does. But I want to comment on what some idiot judge just did. A San Francisco judge, well, where else? A San Francisco judge ordered the Trump administration to cease any expiration of DACA until a pending lawsuit is settled. This Obama executive order that illegally did an end run around Congress is now being defended by a claim that its overturning is unconstitutional. So, now it's unconstitutional to overturn laws that were illegally created. Welcome to the United Oligarchy of America. Why have three separate branches of government when everything can just be overturned by one? But Trump presses on because there are one or two more important things going on in the world besides DACA, such as false alarms from Hawaii, such as the situation in Iran. Former UN Ambassador Susan Rice, a couple of weeks ago, tweeted, "How can Trump help Iran's protesters? Be quiet." Oh, good one, Susan. This from the expert of restrained speech. Rice's tour of lies on the Sunday morning talk shows following her administration's Benghazi disaster were anything but quiet. And how quiet was she while insisting that no unmasking of official phone calls took place, only to have to come back and change her story later? Susan, when it comes to quiet, you are not exactly Harpo Marx. However, in all fairness, let me add, you are no Marcel Marceau either. Speaking of Twitter, my first guest today had a problem with Twitter censoring a couple of his posts. Fortunately, his writing can be found in all kinds of other places, and he doesn't really need Twitter. Eric Golub is a politically conservative columnist, blogger, author, public speaker, satirist, and comedian. He is also a fellow columnist with me at Communities Digital News, and his is the only column I read as often as my own. The guy is as brilliant as he is hilarious. You can also read more of Eric at his TygrrrExpress blog. Eric is author of the book trilogy Ideological Bigotry, Ideological Violence, and Ideological Idiocy. Eric, welcome to our program.
America forever, France and Hollywood never. Great to be with you, sir.
It's good to be with you. Well, over a week ago, I was reading a post from you on Facebook about what happened with your Twitter account. Why don't you give a little recap to our audience?
Sure. As everybody knows, Google, Facebook, and Twitter are run by liberals, and they have thought police to try to ban hate speech. I posted 2 tweets that were deemed hate speech. I used the word bimbos twice. Now, here's the context of both of those. The first one, I attacked liberal media bimbos specifically because they were ignoring and are still ignoring the Iran story. So I believe that while people are fighting and dying to be free and the media is covering nonsense, that makes them bimbos. Because what to me are bimbos? Shallow, vapid people of nothingness. Now, I didn't even mention CNN, MSNBC, or even name the bimbos. I just said media, liberal media bimbos, which, by the way, even had I mentioned CNN, that's not even a person. 20 minutes later, my second tweet, I mentioned Hollywood bimbos. Why? Because leftist pseudo-Jew Sarah Silverman tweeted something so horrific that had a non-Jew said it, it would have been anti-Semitism.
And you know what? Sarah Silverman's hilarious as a comedian, but who are we kidding? When she talks about politics, she does sound like a bimbo.
Yeah, and what she said was actually hate speech, although I think in her case it was just idiocy rather than malice. But she said blood libel. Her tweet said that Israel was created because of the Holocaust. No, no, no. My dad's a Holocaust survivor. I can tell you now, Israel goes back thousands of years. There's not only biblical, but there's archaeological evidence.
Well, you know, Eric, people make the most vile comments about Israel, either as downright lies or talking points that they merely repeat by what they hear around the water cooler or from present-day academia. And Israel has been called everything from an apartheid state to an occupying nation to an illegitimate presence in the Middle East with no historical claim to the land to a people guilty of genocide. And somehow that kind of rhetoric against Israel is never viewed by the media as hateful or incendiary speech. But then you go and you try to defend Israel and you get accused of hate speech.
Yes, because I said Hollywood bimbos, and I did not even mention her by name. So twice I used the word bimbos, and anybody who has ever read me knows that the term bimbo is gender neutral. The last week of December every year, I put out a column, the top 10 bimbos of the year, and it's dedicated to Barack Obama, a shallow, vapid man of nothingness. So
maybe you should have taken Jerry Seinfeld's advice and used the word mimbo to make sure he could be a man or a woman.
Exactly. I mean, to me, Harvey Weinstein is a bimbo. So, but because I used that word bimbos, I was given a 12-hour ban, and Twitter said the 12-hour ban will start when you delete the tweets. And I sent Twitter back a message saying, no, I'm not deleting these tweets. I said it less polite than that. And so instead it went viral. And then after 24 hours, when the entire world pretty much picked up my situation, Breitbart ran with the story. At that point, I came to the conclusion it's easier to destroy Twitter from the inside than outside. So only then did I delete the tweet. And I've now since offered many tweets targeting what I call the Twitter censorship bimbos.
I have the quotation of Twitter's rules right here. It says, I want to read their rules and then read what you wrote. Violating our rules against hateful conduct, you may not promote violence against, threaten, or harass other people on the basis of race, ethnicity, national origin, sexual orientation, gender identity, religious affiliation, age, disability, or serious disease. Now, ladies and gentlemen, here's what Eric wrote. You tell me if it even comes close to any of those things. He writes, I know you already paraphrased it, but I'm going to read your actual words. Liberal media bimbos desperate to overturn 2016 election, spending days on childish ban and gossip, ignoring life, death, Iran story. That was one of them. The other one was Sarah Silverman, to Deborah Messing, anyone who says Israel's creation was because of the Holocaust is either an ignoramus, an anti-Semite, or a self-loathing Jew. Israel was created several thousand years ago, not in 1948. Can any Hollywood bimbos open a history book? So many liberal Jews stupid about their... You know, that is true. I'm of Jewish origin myself. Jews are sometimes their own worst enemy, aren't they? And being self-loathing and critical. But the point is, there was absolutely nothing hateful about that. You were certainly sharing an opinion. You were certainly pushing back against idiocy.
Absolutely. And the fact of the matter is that when Twitter and Facebook and Google say, oh, well, this is all about algorithms, Guess what? Human beings create the algorithms. These people are liberal. And what I did is I took every single hateful response I got back, which contained vulgarity, profanity, etc., and I decided to be a human hall monitor, even though I'm not a big fan of tattling. And I reported every single one of these hateful tweets I got, which said stuff that would get your FCC license yanked. So
and how did Twitter respond to that? Did they remove any of those?
No.
Of course not. Yeah, and if a Palestinian or a Palestinian sympathizer or militant Muslim went on and called Israel a country guilty of genocide or even used the word dirty Jews, I betcha Twitter wouldn't take that down either.
Exactly. And I want everybody to know I even personally contacted some of the top Twitter people on Twitter. One of the top people, one of the VPs of Twitter, I guess she's in their marketing department. I don't remember her name off the top of my head right now. But her Twitter page, for everybody to see, has the resistance and is a picture of an elderly lady resisting, and it has 2 curse words in it. So the person in charge of regulating, or at least one of the top Twitter honchos, I should say, okay, has profanity and political attacks on her Twitter page as her pinned tweet. And people wonder why conservatives like myself are getting harassed.
It absolutely makes your head spin. Well, my response when I read about somebody like you being harassed, Eric, is to want to promote you more than ever. I already gave people some information, but give it again. Tell people how they can get a hold of you on Facebook, your website. Go ahead and give out a little information about yourself.
And they can even find me on Twitter, assuming I don't get banned again. The way to find me on Facebook and Twitter is TygrrrExpress. TYG quadruple R Express. TYGRRRR Express. I'm now up to 5 books. I've got the 4 politically conservative comedy books where I teach people on the right how to use humor to beat the left at their own game. The new one is Ideological Lunacy. And I've got a religious comedy book that is pro-religion rather than anti, where I teach people of faith how to use humor to disarm the secular progressives. That book is called Jewish Lunacy. You don't need to be Jewish to understand it. It's 6,000 years of history, but told by somebody who missed the first 5,960-something years. So friend me on Facebook. Contact me. Do not buy any of my books or T-shirts online. I've got 3 T-shirt lines. Hillary for Prison, Proud Republican, but with an Israeli Star of David on it. And my 3rd one, to make fun of all the leftist activists like Black Lives Matter, I've got T-shirts that say, "Stop judging women by their tops," #backsides matter.
Okay.
So,
and I imagine you're one that promotes Hillary is a little bit tongue-in-cheek and not serious.
Oh, it says Hillary for Prison.
Hillary for prison. Oh, there we go. Look, Eric, yes. You're a great guy and a brave guy. Keep up the good work. Thank you for honoring us by coming on our program.
Thank you, and God bless.
God bless you. You're listening to The Bob Siegel Show. Back to 1170 The Answer. I'm your host, Bob Siegel. My next guest, and no stranger to our program, Mike Fredenburg, contributor for National Review. Mike, welcome back and Happy New Year to you.
Well, Happy New Year to you, Bob. Great to be back. There's a lot in the news. You mentioned a few good items there in your opening talk.
I was originally going to have you come back and recap Trump's first year, but so much happened just last week, it almost seems like another year.
Well, it's definitely worth doing that because I think, as conservatives, we want people that stand with us, people that are in our movement, to always do a perfect job representing us. And, there's a lot of people, National Review and other folks that have been distraught over how, at times, Donald Trump will express things. And I have to admit that there's been a few tweets, a few things that have come out of Donald Trump's mouth, President Trump's mouth, that I could have done without. But I'm going to say that when you consider the tremendous things he's done in his first year, that these are infinitesimally tiny little things. The most recent controversy is another one, only because it's Donald Trump. I will say this. I don't believe in profanity.
I'm like you, though. I think we get all bent out of shape over words when we should look at actions. However, he tried to walk it back and claim that he didn't really say it. Now, I know Dick Durbin is not a reliable source. He's been caught downright lying. And I know that some of the Republicans who were in there said they didn't hear him. However, Fox News, which has been very fair to Donald Trump, unlike the other media, claims that they have multiple reliable sources which say he did say it. I have less trouble that he said it, but I'd rather see him admit it. I do think he compounds things if he's lying about it. And I'm not assuming he's lying, but I'm saying when Fox News, that's been one of his defenders and pretty fair as journalists, when they claim that he did say it, it does make me wonder.
Well, they have two Republicans saying that it did not go down as it was said. So here's what I think happened. What I think happened is that as part of a general discussion on immigration, he may have used that word.
But maybe he didn't use it in exactly that context.
Exactly. So when he
maybe
said
he wasn't calling the nation of Haiti that.
Right, but he was basically making the general statement. Then a little bit later on, there was
maybe he was
discussion.
Just calling Dick Durbin that.
Well, it's possible. It's possible. So regardless, we have conflicting views, conflicting reports. I think it's possible he said that term, which, by the way, is
well, he did admit that he said something that was kind of direct. So, well, let's assume, for the sake of our conversation, that he said it. We still have to say, so what?
Let's assume I say so what. The thing is that a number of those countries he's talking about, they're not full of bad people or S people or anything like that. He wasn't trying to say that, but they have lousy governments.
He uses a lot of hyperbole when he talks, and he talks without a filter, as do most people.
Exactly.
They just don't expect a politician to do it.
So we have now spent a lot of time talking about already, and the thing is that...
And look at what we're not talking about this week to talk about this stupid thing.
So I'm going to put that aside there and point out that the Democrats came to him with a proposal, and potentially, I'm not sure where Lindsey Graham was on this whole thing, but certainly the Dems came to him with a proposal that if he had followed through and agreed to it, would mean that we would lose the House in 2018. Absolutely, positively would have been devastating, and he would have no chance of being reelected in 2020.
Oh, and I think Lindsey Graham was in on it too. And it was just the same old nonsense of, we'll build a little bit of fence.
Yeah, and so
they've done this for years, and nothing ever comes of it.
Lindsey Graham apparently doesn't get it. He does not get it. Right now, New York Times toward the end of last year did a story that showed that on the immigration issue, you can do surveys, but over twice as many people vote for positions that Donald Trump supports than on the left. So people want immigration reform. A clean DACA bill would be the death of the Republican Party in 2018, and it would mean that Trump would not get reelected in 2020. So let's move on past that. The Democrats did not come in good faith to those negotiations.
Well, they went ballistic when Cotton was in there, and people that were a little more hardline, they didn't belong in the room to negotiate too.
Exactly.
It had to be this mamby-pamby rhino Democratic bill.
Exactly. So let's move on from there. And another thing that it's broken in the last couple of days, and is that multiple indictments have been handed down related to the Uranium 1 deal. Which is
one of about 8 to 10 scandals from the Clintons and the Obamas?
Multiple scandals there, but the thing is that apparently this investigation had been ongoing since 2010 or something of that nature, but it had been put into sort of a permanent holding pattern.
It was derailed by Obama's Justice Department and a politicized FBI.
It wasn't shut down. It just wasn't going anywhere. Well, it was re-energized, and now we have, I think it's 7 indictments, and that's going to start to blow this thing open. I mean, the case that corruption was happening seems so obvious, with $140 million going to the Clinton Foundation, Bill Clinton going to Putin's house, sitting down and meeting with Putin, and at the same time, while he's visiting, they're getting paid $500,000 for a single speech. We can go down the list here.
Well, not only that, Obama was caught on a mic talking to one of Putin's surrogates, saying, when I get reelected, I'll have more leverage. Why wasn't that viewed as some kind of collusion with the Russians?
So what I think we're finding here with this whole Russian collusion thing is we found in the past that the left, they scream the loudest when they're actually the ones that are guilty of something. And it's a way to deflect it.
Well, I think they thought they could get away with this because they were sure Hillary was going to become president. And then when Trump won, this panic ensued, and they figured we better change the narrative fast or we're in a heap of trouble.
Exactly. So let's get back here and talk about the other issue you brought up that was major, is that this weekend Hawaii residents were treated to a very unpleasant experience.
Well, and when I heard the news, so one of my friends told me the news yesterday. I hadn't heard it. I just looked at him within a second and I said, they're going to blame Trump for this. And that's already happened, not only from Hollywood, but some political people.
Yes, the representative from
Jamie
Hawaii,
Lee Curtis, Jim Carrey.
Tulsi Gabbard blamed Trump, saying that he's not, appeasing Kim Jong-un enough. So we need to go down the path of appeasement. Anything, as long as Kim Jong-un says something that they like, they're going to be happy with it. His actions don't matter. What they want from him is words now. He's meeting in talks with South Korea. The South Korean president, by the way, is a Chamberlain-type person. He is very much for appeasement. So it's fine that we have people spinning this positively, but this is nothing more than a delaying tactic. Now, recently, I read a very good article by Colonel Ralph Peters. He's a regular guest on Fox News. Now, Colonel Ralph Peters,
he's not much of a Trump supporter either.
Before Trump was running, I would regularly listen to Colonel Peters, and he had always had good common sense opinions, very knowledgeable. But for whatever reason, and once again, he was virulently anti-Trump. He since
we have to admit, before Trump got elected, it was hard to know for sure what he was going to do. It was kind of a roll of the dice and a loose cannon. But since he's been in, I would think military people would be pretty happy with him.
He's been warming up a little bit, I believe. But remember, he was on there attacking Trump and helping Hillary Clinton get elected.
Yeah, he was.
So
he knew Hillary would be an abysmal commander-in-chief.
But with that said, he's very knowledgeable. And what he says happens to 100% coincide with what I believe. This whole business with China supposedly helping with the sanctions against North Korea, they've had decades that they could have shut down that program. The one nation that really could have shut down that program like that is China. But they have not. So if the program's not shut down and if Kim Jong-un is still developing nuclear weapons, it's because China wants a nuclear North Korea. Let's go take a look at what we've been talking about over the last, 9 months. We've had China and Trump going back and forth, and China reluctantly doing more sanctions against North Korea. Yes, they've done stiffer sanctions than they've ever done in the past, but they are not going to stop North Korea from getting nuclear weapons. Putin is not hardly the truth sayer, the person that I want to, go to for the gospel truth. But Putin said it best. He says they would eat grass before they give up their nuclear weapons. So we're now at a position where we're looking at an awful situation. But let's just clarify how awful this is. Number one, our intelligence agencies were blindsided by how fast he progressed, Kim Jong-un progressed in his nuclear program. Okay.
Although they should have known that by paying him $5 billion to not build nukes, he would build nukes.
Are you talking about the Clinton deal?
The Clinton deal.
Okay, that certainly helped, but that was a while ago. And in the meantime, we've had George
Bush and Obama didn't.
And George Bush and Obama
either.
Signing off and kicking the can
Bush
down the road.
Bush at least called them part of the axis of evil, but didn't do anything to stop them.
Yeah. And basically, all this time, China has been sitting there and doing nothing to stop them. So we have a rapid development of nuclear capability that blindsided our intelligence agencies. They've admitted it. Now, part of that came is it looks like they now got a major boost from rocket engine factories from Ukraine, which had been suffering horrible economic downturn with the breakup of the Soviet Union. And it looks like the rocket engines have been coming from Ukraine. And that's one of the reasons they've been able to make big strides. But regardless of the reasons, so now we're sitting here, we have analysts talking about anywhere from 1 to 3 years before they have a solid nuclear capability and an ability to deliver nuclear missiles to American soil. That's the current analyst, but our analysts have been wrong. So every day that we do not get something done on this issue is a day Kim Jong-un is closer to having nuclear weapons. But it's not just nuclear weapons that he can put on nuclear missiles. He can
sell them on the open market to places like Iran.
He has a strong friendship with Iran and partnership with Iran. So one of the things he's doing...
Hezbollah, Hamas, those organizations
one of the main programs that North Korea is involved with is the miniaturization of nuclear weapons. So we're talking about suitcase-sized nuclear weapons making their way into terrorists' hands.
This thing almost seems surrealistic how dangerous it all is.
Okay, so that's really... Then you talk about a nuclear North Korea and the tremendous pawn or chess piece that would put in the hands of China. What we're really talking about here, we're not just talking about North Korea, we're talking about North Korea and China. Now, that's the point that Colonel Ralph Peters makes. Basically, this is about China and making
China
a huge...
could put the squeeze on
this
them
would be a huge, huge geopolitical win for China. A nuclear North Korea is a huge win for China.
Because it's a China surrogate.
They're
and
not
then
afraid.
By osmosis, that makes it Iran one of the surrogates. It's like a domino effect.
Colonel Ralph Peters says that a airburst nuclear weapon over Hawaii would kill 44,000 people and wipe out our military base there, Pearl Harbor.
Well, and now you know that warning that went out when it said this is not a drill, said find shelter, find cover. If it was really a nuclear weapon, no shelter or cover would have made any difference.
It would depend where you were, because Hawaii's very mountainous.
Wouldn't the radiation eventually kill you?
It depends where the wind blew. You don't know. You don't know. It's very variable, but you have mountains there. If the nuclear weapon goes up on the other side of a mountain and the wind's blowing that direction, you're probably going to survive. But regardless, you don't want that. And an airburst is going to wipe out. It's going to, an airburst is going to send an EMP pulse through the entire grid and shut down Hawaii, plus killing people. So, but you know what? One of the next target after that is, according to Colonel Ralph Peters, the massive naval marine complexes here in San Diego.
Oh, great! Something for us to look forward to.
So San Diego, Pearl Harbor, and China doesn't give a hoot if we respond and shellac North Korea. If we respond and attack North Korea after they attack us, China can sit there and they don't care. They don't care. They basically, North Korea will have dealt its number one competitor, its number one enemy in the world, a major blow, and they can sit back there and watch the fun. Sure, they may get a little radiation blowing across the border, but they don't. China, one of the things that China has always believed is, hey, we've got lots of people. They're expendable. Yeah,
they do. Well, they do view their people as being pretty expendable there, especially when they make abortion mandatory. They obviously have a very low regard for human life.
Okay, so we have so you've got that, and then finally, once Kim Jong-un has nuclear weapons, what if he decides to push forward and expand his territory a bit, and says, well, hey, if you try to take back the territory, I'm this crazy guy. I'll use tactical nuclear weapons to stop you.
Now, isn't it interesting how the Democrats are calling Trump crazy, but they're not considering the fact that maybe Trump's trying to deal with the guy in North Korea that's crazy?
I think that he's self-centered, Kim Jong-un. I think he's narcissistic.
Well, his dad was like that.
But I'm not sure he's absolutely crazy. Let's just put it this way.
Well, I should say sometimes when people are just evil, we call them crazy. And crazy's a nicer appraisal. Sometimes there's just such a thing as evil.
So,
but certainly narcissistic.
Here's what it is. Trump had to work with China. He had to go through the effort to see if China would actually rein in North Korea. There's something he had to do. He had to turn over every stone. But when we come back, we can discuss that a little bit more detail.
Okay, I'm here with Mike Fredenburg. We'll be right back. This is Bob Siegel, being joined today by National Review contributor Mike Fredenburg.
So, Bob, as we took the break, I was talking about the Trump administration's mandatory and really the right thing to do. The prospect of having to engage militarily with North Korea is an awful option. You want to leave no stone unturned to avoid that. So, working with China, Trump, did get heavier sanctions put against North Korea than we've ever seen before. But they were not going to stop North Korea, and they're not going to stop North Korea from gaining the nuclear capability. China is very aware of this. So, but it had to be done not only just to do it, but also to show the world that we're doing everything possible to avoid an out-and-out direct military.
What do you think we should do? Shouldn't we do some kind of preemptive strike and take out their nuclear capability?
Let's talk about that too, but let's get here. One of the reasons that China was willing to do the stuff that it did is because one of Donald Trump's there's two main issues he ran on. There was a lot, but the two main ones was immigration and getting back to fairer trade. And one of the people that he mentioned most frequently when it came to unfair trade was China. Well, over the last year, none of those sanctions and all the things that Trump wanted to do to try to address China's mercantilism, China's predatory practices, China's stealing of hundreds of billions of dollars of intellectual property, including tens of billions of dollars of military research. He wasn't able to do that because the priority was to see if he could get China to work with us to shut down North Korea's nuclear program. And
that's a legitimate priority.
It was a legitimate priority, and China understood that. So they manipulated the process cynically to hold off every month that they are able to stop Trump from, responding to their unilateral trade war against the United States. It is worth billions and billions of dollars of cash flowing into the country. So it's a win for China, a huge win for China. And I personally believe that they choreographed this. They worked closely with Kim Jong-un, and anything that Kim Jong-un said was cleared by them. Anything they said, they let Kim Jong-un know. This was a big show for the international community on this whole business with the sanctions and the trade stuff. Now we get back to what should we do now? We've got two options. We're down to really a very small window. So do we want a nuclear North Korea able to supply terrorists, a nuclear North Korea that could be used by China to expand its power and presence in the world? Or do we actually do something militarily to stop Kim Jong-un's step forward? Now, in the past, the reason we have not moved forward with military options is because, what would China do? But forgetting that for a minute, let's put that aside for a moment, because China, with its $400 to $500 billion trade deficit per year with the United States, probably could, if they can get what they want without having to be in a war, probably would like to avoid it. Okay, let's just put it that way. There's a huge consequence. The consequence for them being involved with a war with us, assuming that we're not going to immediately lose or they're not going to immediately lose, is on the trade side, they're going to take a bigger hit than we will. We will take a hit, but they will take a bigger hit.
But they do seem to know that Trump is serious. I thought it was interesting when the premier of China was with Trump on the day that the news came out that we had done that strike in, I think it was Syria. And the guy was sitting right there. I thought that was pretty good optics.
It was good optics, but that was a little piddly thing compared to what we're talking about with North Korea.
I know, but I think it might have said something to him about Trump's resolve and that he's a man to be
I think they take him far more seriously than they took Obama.
They probably went home and laughed their heads off about Obama.
And I think they take him far more seriously than they did George W. Bush. Okay, because these people were reasonable people, men of the world, and Trump is, a pro-U.S. guy.
And they're doing what the mainstream media doesn't. The mainstream media goes ballistic over his tweets. I think China and the foreign powers are, for the most part, taking his actions very seriously.
But in the past, one of the main reasons we have not taken a military option is because the thinking has been that the consequences to the South Korean civilian populations would be so severe that it was unimaginable. The New York Times wrote an article a while back talking about the 14,000 pieces of artillery and rockets right on the DMZ that are within, according to the New York Times, that are within striking distance of Seoul. They basically made the case, they said, within half an hour, that entire city could be leveled by that artillery.
Well, and that's horrific. But then imagine the lives lost if we don't take them out.
Okay, well, let's get back to that. But that analysis is 100% flawed. It's off by orders of magnitude.
Well, it's assuming we're not going to be extremely accurate in what we do.
Of the 12,000 artillery pieces and the 2,000 plus rocket launchers, only about 2,000 can actually reach the outer edges or Seoul. And here's the other thing. Seoul has double the number of bomb shelters in it necessary for its population. So if we did a preemptive strike and the South Korean people went into their bomb shelters, a artillery strike by North Korea would not kill thousands. It would probably be dozens of people or hundreds of people at the most. So we're not talking millions or hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands. We're talking hundreds, assuming the attack's preemptive. Now let's take a look at the North Korean military. Back in the time of the Korean War, they vastly, without the U.S. support, South Korea was vastly overmatched. Today, South Korea has one of the most sophisticated, most capable militaries in the world. It's a little smaller than North Korea, but not much. Their troops are better trained, better equipped. They have better, command and control, battlefield intelligence. The Air Forces are roughly the same size, but the North Korean Air Force, if it ever went against the South Korean Air Force, especially with the U.S. support with our planes there, would be blown out of the sky so quickly. They've got 560 or so planes, but they're old, they're out of date. The pilots only get 20 hours per year flying time. So their Air Force is probably pretty comparable in effectiveness to what the Iraqi Air Force was. Nothing. So they've got 900,000 troops, active military troops in their main army. But if they were to come across the border, they would come across the border without air support and would come under a withering onslaught by South Korean artillery and South Korean air power. So that 900,000 person army is not coming across the border. It's not. They've had another 200,000 or so what's called special forces. And these are, more designed to be like commandos. Small, they break up into small groups and are designed to come across the border, attack power plants, attack infrastructure, attack civilian populations. But to get across the border, they've got to get across the border, and they have a group of, I think it's maybe up to a couple hundred old biplanes, still effective. If they take off, they probably would be hard to shoot down. They can hold up to 20 troops, I believe, something like that. But if we did a preemptive strike and took them out, we did a preemptive strike and took out their amphibious assault vehicles, for going from the coast to coast, we could basically eliminate the vast majority of North Korea's ability to harm the civilian population. That can be done very quickly. We would be able to degrade their artillery very quickly. In a matter of days, they would be running for cover. And with support, we could move in very quickly and gain ground. One of the things they've discovered is things have gotten bad in North Korea. Their main troops, their main 900,000 troops, are basically not getting enough food. So they're malnourished, they're poorly trained, they don't have the same kind of modern military method as the South Koreans do. So South Korea with U.S. support could dominate over North Korea. The big question, of course, is their neighbor, China. What would they do? China.
I'm inclined to think that if we attacked them, China wouldn't do anything. I mean, I'm no military expert, but I don't think that's going to happen. Okay, we'll talk more. We'll come back for one more segment. You're listening to The Bob Siegel Show. I'm here with a rotating co-host and National Review contributor, Mike Fredenburg. Mike, I wanted to ask you before we go on about Iran, because Trump, before the election, after the election, for the last year, has talked about what a horrible deal Obama made, and yet he just recertified it. And I know he gave a lot of warnings, like, this is your last chance, but I was disappointed to see him recertify it. Do you have anything to say about that?
I don't really have anything of particular great wisdom to say about it. All I can say is that there is a massively full plate that Trump is dealing with.
And maybe he just wants to do one thing at a time.
And now let's hypothesize here. I think that we have two awful options facing us with North Korea. Letting them get nuclear weapons, become a nuclear power, let them be a pawn, and basically give China a huge tool to assert over the United States on into the future. And once he gets the nuclear weapons, he's got them. I mean, okay, sure, we can contemplate doing a strike now when we're talking about artillery striking the city. But if he's genuinely can strike South Korea with multiple nuclear weapons, that's off the table. We can't do it anymore. So this is really big. So let's just say, hypothetically, that the Trump administration, as a contingency, maybe that's moving up the possibility, has a strike on North Korea being planned. Well, we need the cooperation of the rest of the world. The rest of the world, France and all these other countries, have been really adamant.
Well, Iran's not going to cooperate, though.
Oh, but who cares about Iran right now? I'm talking about France. I'm talking about all the other countries that wanted the Iranian deal recertified.
Oh, I see. It's not about Iran. It's about
we don't have it.
Well, and maybe he's just saying, look, it's a two-headed monster. I've just got to decide which head to take off first.
My point is that's really important. But right now, North Korea is the most immediate pressing. So what if, by recertifying it, he's increased the likelihood that if something goes down with North Korea, we get these other countries to stand with us?
I see. Well,
that would be worthwhile.
I hope that's what his thinking is,
and
because it didn't look good with all he said about it to then go ahead and recertify
I agree,
that.
but
I agree with you. The guy's got an awful lot on his plate.
Bob,
he certainly thinks about other things in the morning than you and I have to.
We sit here with, I mean, all I can say is the level of things that are happening there,
the mess that this guy inherited,
the ongoing vicious assaults against him, the Mueller probe, all these things
the
happening.
different lawsuits. I mean, it just goes on. And then he tries to do something and some judge overturns it.
Sometimes discretion is the better part of wisdom. And all I'm going to say is that probably what the assessment was is that if we look at it again in the future, we could decide not to certify it. But right now, North Korea is by far and away the priority. So if this helps position us at all with our allies and people that we need to support us, if we do a military option, then I'd say it's probably a wise move. That's my pure conjecture, but I think it's a reasonable hypothesis.
Okay. So
that's...
Well, I certainly hope you're right. Yeah.
I mean, I don't think he likes it. So far, he seems to be a pretty realistic guy.
I'm sure there's no love lost between him and Iran, regardless of what he did. But we'll see. We'll see what happens.
So we finish up the year here with the first year of President Trump, and all I can say is that if you're a conservative who's honest, and even if you're one of those people that was doubtful about Trump, you've got to look back at this last year and just be absolutely thrilled.
I think he did more than Ronald Reagan did in all the time he was in office. Whether or not he's a true conservative or what goes on in his heart, who cares? Look at what he's actually done.
I think we have to expand our definition of true conservative a little bit, because what we've had, and I'm guilty of this over the years, I love the philosophical premises and that supports
the William F.
thought.
Buckley conservative.
The National Review talking about, the market system and, all these things here. But the thing is the conservative movement over the last 20 to 30 years has gotten its butt kicked.
Yeah, they're in their philosophical ivory tower, and meanwhile the Democrats are permeating their culture.
The left controls the education system. We had, just before Trump came into office, I believe one of the reasons the left is so rage-filled,
because they were on the verge of controlling
everything. They thought they had won.
And if they had won, that would have been the end of talk radio. The internet under Obama had become a public utility. Trump reversed that. I mean, they could have eliminated free speech completely.
They could have really started to crack down on it very quickly. We would have now a young judge who believes in judicial activism sitting on the court, appointed by Hillary Clinton. It would have been an utter disaster. Yeah. So when people were talking about the threat that Trump was to the conservative movement, I just chuckled and I said, what are you talking about? We've been up there writing tremendously well-written articles, back and forth to each other, patting each other back how wonderful we are, and we have not been winning. Sure, we've been winning Republican seats, but even with the winning of Republican seats, the country has been shifting leftward.
And a lot of the never-Trump conservatives had that strategy of, well, if Hillary wins, we'll lose the battle, but ultimately we'll win the war because we'll save the purity of conservatism. They don't get it. 4 years of her and conservatism in terms of free speech on the internet, on radio, on television, it would have been gone. Okay. And I don't know what they think they were going to save.
So Trump was not one of these guys that would sit there and start off with premises and necessary and sufficient conditions and work his way to the conservative case. But he is 7 years old. He's your old-fashioned American who believes in American values. Maybe he's not the born-again Christian, that with all the
virtues.
He's
your rough around the edges Uncle Albert that you meet every Thanksgiving.
The edges, but this is a guy who he's done more in office than Ted Cruz would have done.
Yeah, and Ted Cruz was certainly a more pure conservative, but I don't believe Ted Cruz could have accomplished what Trump
I'm not
did.
Sure Ted Cruz would have pulled this
because Trump
out.
had a following at his base that I don't think Ted Cruz ever had.
But no, would Ted Cruz have recognized Israel's embassy? I don't think he would have.
He would have. I mean, he would have given the rhetoric as Obama did, as Bush did, as a lot of but I don't know that he would have followed through. Yeah.
Would he if he actually pulled this out of the Paris Accord? I don't know. I'm just saying Trump basically just goes ahead and does things.
He does it,
And I know he doesn't like being vilified like he is, and I know that he, in some ways, it seems like he has the thin skin, but he keeps moving on.
Well, we talked about this last week. He wants to be liked, and he'll push back, and it does bother him when he's not liked, but not to the point where he'll change his mind, at least from what I can see so far.
And he will say things off the cuff because he wants to sound good at the time. And if you rise and fall on every word or tweet that comes from Donald Trump, you're going to have a wild ride. That's all I can say. What you've got to do is, and I have the same issue. I hear some things coming out saying, "Oh, what does that mean? Does that mean?" But if you take a look at his actions, you can sit there and say, "Well, in the past, for example, he talked about the DACA in the past when he ran for office, and he put a trial balloon out there, and he basically, got the response back, hey, and he understands that the base and the people that elected him are not going to stand for a clean DACA. But I will say this, if I can get the wall funding, all the wall funded, not this $1.6 billion, that was an insult. That was an utter
Dianne
insult.
Feinstein. How about a clean DACA bill now, and we'll talk about the wall later? Yeah, we've never been down that road before, have we?
You give me chain migration, stopping that. You give me air.
And now Dick Durbin is claiming the term chain migration is racist because it's the word chains in there.
And DACA is limited to 700,000 that they have right now. I will jump for joy at that deal.
Yeah.
Jump for joy.
Yeah, I know. Like I said.
And his base will too.
If what he did this last year is all he does, it's a whole lot better than where we were. Okay, Mike, great having you on. We'll have you on again really soon. We will see you next week, everybody.